I'm that girl, and this is my Monday morning. So there's that. But it's actually a really fantastic day, even though it is grey and drizzly. We can still have a lot to be appreciative of and enjoy and explore. And this weekend's been very fantastic for many, many, many reasons. And all of the sessions that I was involved with, always mind blowing, right? Always mind blowing. I don't think I'm going to get to a point ever where I'm like, heard it before, because we just keep hearing new information and it keeps expanding with more details and just more wisdom and knowledge. The more we sort of grow and the more we're ready to hear certain things, we get there. So it feels like my team has been preparing me for a lot of other things to do with these sessions, and with my channeling, and for some, when I'm going through this, when they're preparing me for this, I don't quite see the purpose and the lessons and all that. I know I'm experiencing something, and at some point it just sort of seems to all compile into a big experience to then be able to explore it in sessions. And it's fine, it's cool. I'm open to all experiences, but when I'm in this journey, I don't see the significance of it, or I don't see the lessons there until it's all sort of unfolded completely. And it's all purposeful. So it feels like, it reminds me of when people are thinking about doing sessions and they start writing their list of questions. And as they're sort of waiting between the time that they emotionally commit to doing a session and actually having the session, something really big will sort of unfold, or even something really small will unfold that kind of just makes them think, what was all that about? And it's usually the key to really significant things. So it can be the case where I have sessions with a person multiple times, and there's just something still that kind of reminds them of this, like, what was that dream all about? Or I had this vision once, or this deja vu, or something. And it just seems so insignificant that they don't really ask about it in sessions, because they sort of feel like we can't ask small questions in these sessions. They're too profound, and we must be able to, ask the big questions of the universe. But really, all our small kind of questions are still very, very significant too, because we don't know what that is going to bring out and lead us to. So, it's very purposeful. Interesting. Everything's just so interesting. I sort of feel like I'm lacking words to even be able to like define it. What all the lessons and experiences I've had this weekend. But it's fascinating to feel into different souls, and different beings at different sort of levels. So, us here, 3D, I can connect into the consciousness of those three of us, being 3D beings. And then you've got the other extra layer upon you, which is your guide, which really does actually come in and help guide you a lot. Or you think it's just all organic thoughts, and you are the ruler of your universe, and you've got free will. You do have free will to take on the advice that your subconscious is constantly nudging you, guiding you to. And when you sort of dismiss, and use your free will to dismiss taking on board that recommendation, we can take the really long journey pathway to learn certain things and have those experiences that way. But the subconscious never gives up on you, and the subconscious will still be like, okay, well, you've made your choices, go with that guy, then see how far you go with that. Like, whatever, like the subconscious respects all of your choices and decisions, but will always be trying to guide you to where you're supposed to go. So for that example, right, we all have experienced our friends who have gone out with people that don't really empower them and actually really holding them back. Even friends can hold other friends back, and not intentionally, but accidentally, right? So while we're all on this journey independently together, our own paths are really significant and important. And, the universe will definitely remove people from our lives if they're too impacting and too limiting us from these experiences that we're supposed to grow from. So super significant. There is there is still stuff that they want to share, always, right? Like, I don't think they'll ever want to stop, like, mansplaining our lives to us with much love. But it's all about being responsible for our own choices. And so when we've got our conscious minds, and then we've got our mindsets, and opinions from our subconsciouses, and then we've got our higher selves, and then we've got our collectives all supporting that, and then we've got, even more like the source collectives, and while everyone's having these experiences to empower different planets, and different consciousnesses, and different groups, and different beings, and different life contracts, and all this sort of stuff, it gets really interesting how they sort of organize and have this, it's like a council. So I experienced being in a meeting with a council, and I was calling in the consciousness of a being who was then having to be responsible for his own actions. And it was so interesting because I could feel his whole sort of him being scanned. It's like he didn't want to come into this meeting, I have to say, but he was summoned, and feeling into him having to speak in front of this council was really, really, really interesting. And they weren't there judging him, criticizing him for all his naughty choices and blah, 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 blah. They actually just wanted to hold space for him and allow him to feel into what he was sort of lacking, and where his hurts were, to be able to overcome certain perceptions, to be able to see what he was lacking and what was holding him back, for him to then realize that a big one was he learned lots. He had much epiphanies. While that session was very short, in our perspective of time, it felt like it was a very long, but also instant experience for those souls, but also a long experience. So, time, blah, a spaghetti, So anyway, so one of his big things was, what is the point having love? Ugh, what do I do with love? I've got no one to have love with. If I had love, what the fuck would I do with it, right? It's like that ornament that just gets dusty. You don't do anything with it. It's worthless. He didn't realize that loving himself was really profound. And he thought that if you had love, then you'd actually, to have love would only be significant if you had someone to give it to. And it was just so fascinating. Sort of has been quite a prickly cactus for many of his choices. And because of that, he sort of isolated himself from others that he could have potentially had friends with or partnerships with. So interesting. But yeah, the whole concept when he was being brought to this council, what do I do with love? Why would I want love? That's so redundant. It's not in fashion. And when he realized that he actually needed to love himself and love everyone that was around him in his past, he was wanting to be loved. He actually wanted to be respected. He wanted to be very powerful, and he didn't care how he was going to get his power, right? He didn't care. He would do he would manipulate, lie, deceive, be a real naughty trickster just to get power and influence. And so he didn't care how he was getting it. He just wanted it. He just wanted to be, an overlord or, whatever. So it was really interesting because he thought that should have impressed a whole bunch of people, and it didn't. And now he's losing a lot of control and gain over humanity. Humanity is waking up to that nonsense now. They're not resonating with it. They're not buying into it. And they're sort of not being impacted as much as they used to be, which kind of really frustrates him, right? Because if you're playing with this toy, humanity, and they're not doing the things that you're used to them doing, there's a change. And when he wants to control everything and rule everything, if there is change that's beyond his own he wants to control everything. And so when things go out of his control, it really pisses him off quite a lot. And it kind of, makes him have even more tantrums. So he had to look at his behavior, and he had to look at why he was wanting to control, and why he wanted to hurt. And because he wasn't supported by those who he expected that would be really impressed with his sort of destruction and way of that, he actually thought that they were the bad ones, and he despised them for it. And so he couldn't understand why they were not impressed with his, hobby of distractions. So it's very, very interesting. But and I'm still unpacking it, but it was just so bizarre when he was like, what would I do with love? He just thought it was something that you could trade with others. He never considered that if he actually loved himself and empowered himself, that would actually attract more people, beings, souls, and whatever you want to call them, into his life, into his worlds. So he actually felt really lonely, which is quite sad. So it was very interesting to cry with him. So bizarre, because I'm channeling and I'm feeling all his hurt and all his pain, all his epiphanies and all his different perspectives. And while he's in front of this council having to actually go through all of that, it was so interesting. I couldn't do his own inner work for him. I can't do anyone's inner work for him, but to be on this journey with him, to feel into all of his epiphanies and stuff was very interesting. So, all we can do is have compassion, and all we can remember is that, we're all one, and we all have sort of the same soul desires to feel the frequency vibrations of love, which is really the frequency vibrations of source. And the more you empower yourselves to do things that raise your vibrations, which is really following your own passions and desires, that really uplift you. And we're all really naturally gifted at certain things, and we're supposed to find and remember those things and empower ourselves, and really truly step up and do those things that really give us joy. So the more we do that, the more high frequency we are, which is more abundance of frequency we get. So if we're doing something that doesn't really fulfill us, lots of people confuse physical, like 9-to-5 jobs. That doesn't fulfill me. I hate that. But then when you go in sessions and you ask, your actual fulfillment is empowering those people around you, because you have life contracts with each other, and that's the stuff. So a lot of people get confused about, why the hell am I still doing this job that's beneath me? For example, because people want to, really heal the world and empower the world and connect in with millions of people, blah, 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 blah. You can connect into millions of people and give them love and empowerment by doing that 15-minute meditation, guided meditation, the white light one. It is pretty profound. And lots of people, they're noticing the more they do it, the more apt they are at really surrendering in. Basically, you're energetically channeling in then your higher self, your subconscious, to be able to then give a love bubble to everyone you invite into that pyramid, and they take over. So if you fall asleep in that, that's really because you're pushing your subconscious aside, your conscious mind aside, and so your subconscious is coming in to really help heal really profoundly all of those that you invite into your white pyramid of light. So, it's super purposeful. And I love hearing how people are noticing this too. So yay, teamwork. Fantastic times. So the experiences some souls are having now as walk-ins is actually feeling into the emotional realm of being part of a family, being part of a community, and being part of a teamwork, and a whole lot of stuff, right? So a lot of souls are now anchored in, walked into many different beings here to take over their lives. So they've had an imprint of all of their past life experiences this lifetime, to be able to then pretend to be fully continuing on being that person. And and so it's so significant, super significant. People who are having profound walk-ins right now, really significant. And they are here to feel into, maybe for the very first time, even though it seems like some soul essences are spread out to multiple different people, so they can all profoundly quickly have different, be the mom, be the dad, be the whatever, all of this all twined in, so they can quickly have an experience. So we know when we come into as walk-ins, we do get the imprints of the entire life up to date, right? And so this is why lots of people are like, oh, you'd know a imprint a walk-in Joe, because they wouldn't know who they were. They'd lose all their memory. It's like, that doesn't work like that. That doesn't, they have to be seamless. And you may get a bit of a disorientation, like, who am I again? Like, it's a weird thing. You're like, why am I thinking that? I know who I am. But you almost feel like you're living in an autopilot, because you're really seemingly merged in it. It's quite fascinating. And when you're having your sessions, because interns are free, it would be a really interesting question to ask your subconscious. Have you had any walk-ins, and why? Because sometimes a walk-in can just come in for like a period in your time of your life that they just wanted to experience it for themselves. They may not be the dominant soul, but they may just be part of the soul essences that are within the vessels. Remember, you don't just have one soul essence potentially. You could have quite a few hanging out within you. Doesn't mean you've got multiple personalities. It just means you're all working together to have the experience to then play, and potentially use your free will to explore sort of things. Lots of lifetime karmic contracts are occurring when a soul essence comes in for a bit and then moves out as soon as they've kind of learnt that experience, had those lessons. Remembering that when you exit these lifetimes and you're reviewing your lifetimes, you get to explore it so much more. You remember the feelings, you remember the choices and decisions you felt like you had, and you knew the decision you made afterwards. And all of that is really powerful to be able to help you with your own personal experiences and journeys to understand all the different ways of how things are. So, life contracts, life reviews are so profound. And, things just feel like, again, they're just speeding up as, many souls are coming in at this really significant time. So again, I know that we say that all these experiences are super significant, and what we're really waiting for is a lot of these souls to have these experiences. But we haven't asked, what's the experiences of X, Y, and Z? And ultimately, a lot of these walk-ins are to experience those family connections and what it feels like to be a mother worried for their children in this way of the world, and kind of being frustrated potentially about how they're seeing that maybe like the education system isn't really empowering them the way that intuitively we sort of know how it should be. So so much to be said, and I feel like they're really quite open and keen to be able to share everything, but it just feels like, this could take freaking forever. But the experiences that all these souls are having now being here is, it counts. It really, really, really matters. So what we have to remind ourselves is that we're all one. We all still are trying to find our way back to source, to empower ourselves back to source, and to have all these different experiences. And sorry, I'm still processing everything. You may have heard a channeling that I did do publicly, because he really wanted to come in, because he definitely had, Robin definitely had some people who are listening. He really needed your attention. And I think you know who you are. And there was lots of other messages in that when I heard back to that channeling. When I listened back to it, because I sort of wanted to know, what was he talking about? Sounds strange, but I stumbled over longevity, and I couldn't understand why at the time. So I wanted to listen back, and I can say it fine. But what the point of that stumble was, is that he was just speaking about how he felt like if he actually had looked after his body physically better with his food and his diet and his exercise, he would have lived longer. He still has that sort of perception. He has still hasn't come to terms with potentially that was his life contract for a significant reason and point. And it's like he's still thinking he could have had a longer life if he just made better choices. But it felt like his team were trying to let him know, actually, no, that was divine, organized timing from their perspective. So maybe he hasn't been able to see that quite yet that way. So I think he's still trying to heal and forgive himself for his choices that he made in that lifetime, regarding the drugs and maybe the alcohol and sugars. So Yeah, it was really interesting. And also to get your attention to, how we should really be able to express ourselves instead of just being like, I feel X, Y, and Z and my day is fantastic. We really actually have to fully embody and feel into all our emotions when we're expressing them to other people, because that's the most authentic. And he was sort of saying, if we're not fully sharing how we are feeling with our bodies and our expressions and a whole lot of stuff, we're holding back, and then that confuses people because they're not feeling our full authentic truth. We could say, I feel really happy today and I can't believe I'm here. I feel so special and gifted. It doesn't kind of really sell it. Not that we have to sell it, but we're communicating with each other at so many different levels. Right, we're a complete package. We're supposed to be expressive for a reason, but if we're too flamboyant or whatever, people just think, oh, this is too over the top. Mute it down. But that is you saying to yourself, I don't want to hear people's full integrity and expressions. I just like things to be really small and bland, because it's too overwhelming for me to feel into their full truth. Because what full truth people are really saying is, I'm still trying to struggle to understand the density that I'm feeling. I know that there is a lot of manipulation and distortion around this world, but I'm trying to find my way through it, right? But they can't quite get all of that. So when we feel into what everyone's really going through, it can be a lot. And those empaths are really trying to tune out most of the world because this is too much. They're very, very aware of it, but they don't want to keep feeling, and they don't want to keep being reminded of it, especially if they can't understand the significances and purposes of everything. So there's that. So anyway, it was really interesting. I was listening to that channeling and I thought really lazily, oh, he's inconsistent. He's so inconsistent. First of all, he tells us that, humanity is not a laughing stock. And then he's telling us laugh at our mistakes. Kind of, it was confusing. But then I actually stopped and thought about it. He's right. We're not supposed to take our mistakes seriously, celebrate them, because we're learning from them, from those experiences, to grow from them. Fantastic, right? I'd laugh my ass off too now that I'm thinking about my own stuff, because I'm like, God, I was so reactionary. When we laugh at something, we're not taking it so seriously. And he's saying when we make mistakes, we take it so fucking seriously. We block ourselves and distance ourselves and don't want to do it again. And we're so annoyed and we don't want to try again. And we're just pissed off. He's saying, don't do that. Don't do that, because because that's what he sort of did, right? He started really he was his worst critic, and he really ate into himself because of his own frustrations with his own choices, and that made him actually make more wrong choices for him, because he just couldn't forgive himself. And when it's like those people who think if they've ever masturbated once, you're going to go to hell because my preacher said something like that, right? I think so. But anyway, and so if you've discovered that you're going to hell because you masturbated once, then you kind of give up. Well, fuck it, I'm going to be the biggest wanker in the world, because I've already done it once. Obviously, there's nothing I can do to undo it. So, blah, 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 blah. So he didn't get the love of self. He feels really guilty that he was looking at other people's issues and limitations and blockages more than his actual own. So yeah, there was that. But he does want us to take what's happening for humanity super seriously. Like, this is what his big thing was, right? Laugh at your own journey, totally empower yourselves through it and get over it, because you need to be helping what's really fucking serious, right? State of humanity. And, we mustn't confuse the differences of it, focus on not so much of being big critics to ourselves, allow ourselves to grow, allow ourselves to keep on trying different ways to try and get it right, to learn from those experiences. And remember, it's not getting things right. All of those experiences are the right, is the lessons, and that's the significance. So, I do know lots of people are afraid to do stuff because they may get criticized or limited or whatever. And so they don't even try. They're too scared. because maybe they've failed once before and they did not like it, and their perception of what failure is. So, when we say fail and success and right and wrong, those are things that are really limited perspectives, because it's all purposeful experiences for lessons to grow from. And that's the whole key of being here, right? So yeah, it did sound, when I was half listening to it sort of lazily, that it did sound like he was inconsistent with what he was saying, what we should be focusing on and what we should be laughing about. And you've got to really heal and know the purposes and lessons of our experiences to then be able to get to that laughing point. But it kind of coincides with feeling gratitude towards experiences as well. So anyway, I have to go, but I love you guys. Happy week forward. We've got this. We're unbreakable, and this is definitely something we can easily master for ourselves and while we're together.